Imagine standing before a crowd of thousands, all waiting to hear words that would shape the course of a nation. This was Martin Luther King Jr.'s reality. He was not just a preacher, nor just a leader, he was a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience, and a voice for the voiceless. Behind his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech and the powerful movements he led lies a story of humble beginnings, challenges, and triumphs. To truly understand his impact, we must journey back to where it all began. Join us as we unfold Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, starting from his early days and moving through his awakening to the struggles of his people, his discovery of his life's purpose, and the first steps of a young leader who would soon inspire millions. Birth and early life. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. Born as Michael Luther King Jr., he was later renamed Martin by his father, Martin Luther King Sr., a powerful and determined Baptist preacher. King's mother, Alberta Williams King, was a schoolteacher from a highly respected family. This upbringing in a strong, loving, and faith-centered family set the stage for Martin's character, ideals, and the courage he would later display in his life. Martin grew up in the Sweet Auburn district of Atlanta, a hub for Black culture and business. Despite the neighborhood's sense of pride and community, life in the South was deeply segregated, filled with the oppressive weight of Jim Crow laws. As a child, Martin was shielded from some of this harsh reality by his family, but he could still see the differences all around him. One day, when he was 6 years old, he experienced his first personal encounter with racism that would leave a lasting impression that a close friend, a white boy he had played with for years, was suddenly no longer allowed to associate with him because of his race. When Martin tried to understand why his friend's parents had made this decision, his parents sat him down and explained the reality of segregation and racism. His mother and father instilled in him a deep sense of pride and self-worth despite these experiences. Martin's father, known as Daddy King, was not only a pastor but also an outspoken advocate for racial equality, who would boldly confront injustice whenever he encountered it. His father's unbreakable spirit and his mother's compassion for education and knowledge provided a unique blend of influences. Alberta King often told Martin, "You are as good as anyone else," a reminder that he had a duty to stand up against prejudice and oppression. As a young boy, Martin was both curious and sensitive. He excelled in school and had a natural interest in reading, absorbing the stories of heroic figures and great thinkers. His early exposure to religion shaped his sense of morality, and he often attended church services, where he observed his father's powerful sermons. These early experiences would sow the seeds of a profound love for oration, and he began to understand the power of words to move hearts and inspire change. One of the pivotal moments of Martin's early life came when his beloved grandmother, Jenny, passed away. Martin was only 12 years old, and he was devastated by her death, feeling personally responsible because he had disobeyed his parents that day. He even attempted to harm himself out of guilt, but his family comforted him, helping him understand that her passing was not his fault. This experience brought Martin face to face with grief and loss, a reminder of the fragility of life that strengthened his resolve to find meaning and purpose. As he grew, Martin continued to witness acts of racial injustice, both subtle and overt. He began to understand the broader implications of segregation on Black communities. He saw how African Americans were denied the right to vote, refused access to quality education, and faced daily humiliation simply because of their skin color. Yet, his family reminded him that he could make a difference, and he believed them. They emphasized that education, faith, and a commitment to justice were powerful tools for creating change. Education and becoming a minister. Martin Luther King Jr. was an outstanding student, a testament to his family's values and his own intellectual curiosity. At the age of 15, he was admitted to Morehouse College, an all-Black institution and a historic seat of higher learning in Atlanta. Morehouse had a reputation for producing socially conscious leaders, and it was here that Martin would meet influential mentors who would guide his developing worldview. One of the most important of these mentors was Dr. Benjamin Mays, the college's president. Dr. Mays was a fierce advocate for social justice and the moral power of religion, and he encouraged Martin to use his faith as a catalyst for positive change. Under Dr. May's mentorship, Martin began to see the church not only as a place of worship but as a platform for social activism. Mays inspired Martin to consider how Christian principles could serve as a foundation for addressing inequality. He taught Martin that the church had a responsibility to lead society toward justice and compassion, and Martin was captivated by this idea. May's influence was so strong that it inspired Martin to seriously consider a future in the ministry, something he had previously resisted despite his father's encouragement. After graduating from Morehouse in 1948, Martin attended Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. Here, he was one of the few black students in a predominantly white environment, which was a challenging experience for him. At Crozer, Martin encountered racism in more subtle but still painful forms. Nevertheless, he pushed through these experiences, determined to continue his education. He found himself drawn to theological studies, immersing himself in the works of theologians, philosophers, and social activists from around the world. It was during his time at Crozer that Martin discovered the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, whose philosophy of nonviolent resistance would become a central tenet of King's approach to social change. Gandhi's concept of satyagraha, or truth force, deeply resonated with Martin. He saw in Gandhi's approach a powerful way to confront oppression without perpetuating cycles of violence. For King, Gandhi's example proved that nonviolence could be a transformative force, one that required immense inner strength and discipline but had the power to dismantle systems of injustice. After earning his degree at Crozer, Martin decided to pursue a doctorate in systematic theology at Boston University. His time in Boston was intellectually enriching and also life-changing in another way. It was here that he met Coretta Scott. Coretta was a talented musician and a fellow activist with a shared passion for social justice. The two quickly developed a strong bond and were married in 1953. Coretta would become Martin's closest confidant, a steadfast partner, and a supporter of his work even when it meant risking her own safety and security. In 1955, King graduated from Boston University with a Ph.D. and accepted a position as pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. The community at Dexter Avenue welcomed him with open arms, and he began his work as a young pastor. His sermons, characterized by powerful language and moral clarity, began to attract attention. Although he was only 26 years old, his compassion, intellect, and sense of justice made him a respected leader. It was in Montgomery that Martin would face the defining moment of his early career, one that would set him on the way to become the leader. The Montgomery Bus Boycott. The Montgomery Bus Boycott was not only a pivotal moment in Martin Luther King Jr.'s life but also a watershed in the fight for civil rights in America. When Rosa Parks, a seamstress and civil rights activist, was arrested on December 1, 1955, for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger, it sparked outrage across Montgomery's black community. Leaders in the community quickly realized that this arrest could serve as a powerful catalyst for change, and they began organizing a protest to boycott the city's segregated bus system. Though King was still a young pastor at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, his calm presence, oratorical skills, and moral conviction made him a natural choice to lead the boycott. He was asked to head the newly formed Montgomery Improvement Association (MIA), tasked with coordinating the protest efforts. King initially felt some hesitation about taking on such a high-profile role, but he recognized that this was an opportunity to stand up for justice in a way that could resonate beyond Montgomery. Accepting the role, he committed to leading with courage, love, and unwavering commitment to nonviolence. The boycott officially began on December 5, 1955, the day of Rosa Parks' trial. That day, black residents of Montgomery refused to ride the buses, and the boycott continued day after day. People walked to work, school, and church, sometimes covering miles on foot. Some carpooled, while others used alternative means of transportation, all in an effort to avoid using the buses. This act of defiance was not easy. It required daily sacrifices and a level of solidarity that had rarely been seen before in the struggle for civil rights. The boycott was financially and physically demanding, especially for those who had to endure long commutes without the buses. But the community's determination only grew stronger with each passing day. King's role during this time extended beyond organizing and speeches. He became the embodiment of the movement's spirit. At meetings and gatherings, he delivered powerful sermons and speeches that motivated people to persist, even in the face of adversity. His message was clear: the boycott was not just about the right to sit wherever one wanted on a bus, it was about demanding dignity, respect, and equality. He insisted that the boycott be conducted with peace and dignity, no matter what obstacles or acts of intimidation were encountered. The boycott quickly drew the attention of local authorities and white citizens, who sought to undermine and intimidate the organizers. King and other leaders faced harassment, threats, and even violence. King himself received numerous death threats, and on January 30, 1956, his home was bombed while his wife, Coretta, and their daughter Yolanda were inside. Thankfully, they were unharmed, but the incident left the King family shaken. That night, an angry crowd gathered outside King's home, ready to retaliate against those responsible. But King emerged to speak to the crowd, urging them to choose peace over violence. He reminded them, "We must love our white brothers no matter what they do to us. We must make them know that we love them. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend." This moment highlighted King's commitment to nonviolence, reinforcing his belief that love and moral courage were more powerful than anger and revenge. As the boycott stretched on for weeks and then months, it became clear that this movement was having a profound impact. The bus company suffered financially, as a large portion of its ridership was black. Moreover, the national media began covering the boycott, bringing widespread attention to the injustice faced by African Americans in the South. King's leadership turned him into a national figure, and he became a symbol of hope and resilience. The boycott continued for 381 days, during which the black community of Montgomery showed remarkable unity and resilience. Finally, on November 13, 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. This landmark decision was a monumental victory, not only for the people of Montgomery but for the entire civil rights movement. On December 20, 1956, the Supreme Court's ruling took effect, and the boycott officially ended the following day, as Montgomery's black residents returned to the buses as equals, able to sit wherever they wished. The success of the Montgomery bus boycott established Martin Luther King Jr. as one of the leading voices of the civil rights movement. He had demonstrated that nonviolent resistance, rooted in love and moral conviction, could challenge even the most entrenched systems of oppression. The boycott showed the nation, and the world, that change was possible when people united around a just cause. King's leadership during this campaign set the stage for the many other challenges he would face in the years to come, and it laid the groundwork for the philosophy of nonviolence that would guide the civil rights movement in its pursuit of justice and equality. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. After the success of the Montgomery bus boycott, Martin Luther King Jr. recognized that this was only the beginning of the fight for civil rights in America. He knew that a larger, more organized movement was needed to tackle the widespread racial injustices in the country. Along with other civil rights leaders, King helped establish the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, in 1957, an organization dedicated to advancing the cause of black civil rights through nonviolent means. The SCLC's mission was clear: to harness the power of black churches, which were deeply rooted in communities across the South, to mobilize people in a sustained fight against segregation. King became the president of the SCLC, and he traveled extensively to promote its message, speaking in churches, schools, and town halls. He emphasized the importance of peaceful resistance, arguing that it was not only the most effective strategy but also a moral imperative rooted in Christian values. The SCLC organized various campaigns throughout the South, including voter registration drives, sit-ins, and marches. These actions often provoked violent reactions from those opposed to integration, which drew national attention to the brutal realities of segregation. King and the SCLC aimed to show America, and the world, that African Americans were facing not only discrimination but also violence and intimidation as they pursued basic human rights. One of the most notable campaigns led by the SCLC was in Birmingham, Alabama, in 1963. Birmingham was known as one of the most segregated cities in America, with rigidly enforced laws and a deeply entrenched system of racial inequality. The campaign, called Project C for Confrontation, aimed to challenge these unjust laws through acts of nonviolent protest, including sit-ins, marches, and boycotts. King knew that this would be a difficult battle, but he believed that Birmingham could serve as a powerful example of the strength of nonviolent resistance. During the campaign, King was arrested and placed in solitary confinement. While in jail, he wrote his famous Letter from Birmingham Jail, a powerful defense of civil disobedience that outlined his philosophy of nonviolence and the urgency of the struggle for justice. In the letter, he famously wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," a line that would become one of his most quoted statements. The letter highlighted the moral responsibility to challenge unjust laws and emphasized that waiting for change was no longer an option. The Birmingham campaign faced intense opposition, with police using fire hoses, attack dogs, and nightsticks against the protesters, many of whom were young students. The shocking images of violence, broadcast across the nation, horrified Americans and increased support for the civil rights movement. Eventually, the campaign led to an agreement to desegregate Birmingham's public facilities, marking a significant victory for the SCLC and proving the power of nonviolent protest. The success of the Birmingham campaign further solidified King's leadership within the civil rights movement, and the SCLC became a model for organizing nonviolent resistance. It was clear that the movement was growing stronger, and King, with the SCLC's support, was determined to push forward. He believed that nonviolence was not just a tactic but a way of life, one that could transform society from the inside out. I Have a Dream speech and the March on Washington. In 1963, the civil rights movement reached a crucial turning point with the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Organized by a coalition of civil rights groups, labor unions, and religious organizations, the march aimed to advocate for civil and economic rights for African Americans. King, along with other leaders, saw the march as an opportunity to show the unity and strength of the movement and to push for significant legislative changes. On August 28, 1963, more than 250,000 people gathered on a National Mall in Washington, D.C., in what would become one of the largest demonstrations in American history. The crowd included people of all races and backgrounds, united in their demand for justice, equality, and an end to racial discrimination. King was one of the final speakers of the day, and as he stepped up to the podium in front of the Lincoln Memorial, he delivered what would become one of the most famous speeches in history. King's "I Have a Dream" speech was not just a call to action, it was a vision for a better America. He spoke of a future where his children would be judged not by the color of their skin but by the content of their character. His words painted a picture of a nation where justice and freedom were available to all, regardless of race. The speech resonated deeply with the crowd and with millions watching on television. King's eloquence, passion, and vision captured the hopes and dreams of a generation. The speech became a rallying cry for the movement, and the phrase, "I have a dream," became synonymous with the struggle for equality. The March on Washington succeeded in drawing widespread attention to the civil rights movement and in increasing public pressure on the government to pass civil rights legislation. In 1964, partly as a result of the momentum from the march, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act, which prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. This landmark law was a major victory for the civil rights movement and a testament to the power of collective action and nonviolent resistance. Nobel Peace Prize. In 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to combat racial inequality through nonviolent resistance. At just 35 years old, he became the youngest person at the time to receive this prestigious award. The Nobel Committee recognized King's tireless dedication to justice and peace, and his acceptance of the award marked an important moment in the history of the civil rights movement. King traveled to Oslo, Norway, to accept the prize on December 10, 1964. In his acceptance speech, he emphasized the global importance of nonviolence and the need for unity in the struggle against oppression. That he dedicated the prize to the millions of African Americans who had fought for their rights and to people around the world who suffered under the yoke of injustice. King used this platform to draw attention to the continued struggles of African Americans and to reaffirm his commitment to peaceful change. The Nobel Prize was a powerful symbol of recognition for King's work, and it further cemented his status as a global icon for peace and justice. However, King understood that the fight was far from over. He used the prize money to fund the ongoing work of the civil rights movement, knowing that there were still many battles to be fought. The award also increased international awareness of the American civil rights movement, encouraging people around the world to support King's vision of a society built on equality and respect for human rights. Assassination and legacy. Martin Luther King Jr. continued to work tirelessly for social justice, expanding his focus to include issues of poverty and economic inequality. He launched the Poor People's Campaign, an effort to address economic injustices affecting people of all races. King believed that economic inequality was deeply intertwined with racial discrimination and that true freedom could not exist without economic justice. He organized a campaign to bring people from across the nation to Washington, D.C., where they would demand better living conditions, fair wages, and access to education and healthcare. However, King's activism made him a target. On April 4, 1968, while in Memphis, Tennessee, to support a sanitation workers' strike, King was assassinated. He was shot while standing on the balcony of his hotel, a tragic and senseless act that shocked the nation and the world. News of his death sparked riots and mourning in cities across the United States, as people grappled with the loss of one of the most beloved and influential leaders of the 20th century. King's assassination was a devastating blow to the civil rights movement, but his legacy lived on. His teachings and vision continue to inspire people around the world. The work he began for racial justice, economic equality, and nonviolent resistance has shaped generations of activists, and his dream of a just and equal society remains a guiding light for those committed to change. In 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed a bill creating Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a federal holiday dedicated to honoring King's life and contributions to the country. Today, this holiday serves as a reminder of his courage, compassion, and unwavering commitment to justice. His words, his vision, and his legacy continue to challenge and inspire people to stand against inequality and strive for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the life of Martin Luther King Jr. His story reminds us of the power of courage, hope, and love to bring about change. If you found this video inspiring, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth stories of influential figures and historic movements. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family, and let us know in the comments how King's legacy has impacted you. Thank you, and stay tuned for more videos that uncover the stories that have shaped our world.